In NASCAR's history, there have been plenty of moments that have completely changed the game, in big ways and small ways, butterfly effects, or basically when one instance, whether small or large, causes large changes over time. So today, I am going to look into what you guys thought was the biggest NASCAR butterfly effects, as I put out a community post basically asking to hear, and you didn't disappoint. Oreo Nation 3, which I gotta say I'm a big fan of your race uploads, has said, how Spingate made Truex a NASCAR champion. 2013, release from MWR. 2014, join Furniture Row. 2015, first Final Four, bounce back. 2016, title contender. 2017, champion. I guess Clint Bowyer helped Truex by becoming champion that night in 2013. And that's a big way to look at it. With Napa leaving, it meant that Truex would have to leave as he had no sponsor at MWR that late in the season. It meant that he would have to jump ship to the only team that would take him, Furniture Row, a team that would remain loyal through a horrible season both on and off the track, and would help build up what would turn into what could have been a dynasty in NASCAR. So yeah, that was one of the big ripple effects of Spingate. Along with the fact that, well, some kid by the name of Chase Elliott basically had a great road paved ahead for sponsorship with Napa being wide open for him. Christopher C. left a couple, but this one was probably my favorite. Another more directly relevant to NASCAR is Lee Petty being a bit stingy on not buying enough paint for his and his son's car, forcing them to mix blue and white. Richard Petty liked how it came out and kept the ratio to make his signature Petty blue, and says I just learned about this during his interview at the Rose Parade the other day. And this is one that's really big in a different sense than, say, Spingate. The paint did not change whatsoever the performance of the car on the track. It did nothing for the results, all it did was aesthetic. But in NASCAR and car culture in general, aesthetic is such a huge factor. And with Richard Petty, well, this became one of the most famous aesthetics in NASCAR history. When you think of iconic paint schemes, you think of the Black 3, the Rainbow 24, and Petty Blue. Another big one Daniel brought up is COVID bringing back midweek racing, bringing back old tracks since some tracks weren't allowed to be open, Kyle Larson's incident on iRacing, and now he's at Hendrick, iRacing Pro Invitational on TV as well. With these, there's a lot. COVID changed the game for everyone, and NASCAR was no different whatsoever. Because with midweek racing, many forget that was something NASCAR was seriously looking to explore before COVID. COVID gave them the excuse and the need to do so, and we found out through a year that was pretty abnormal that midweek racing, TV rating-wise and attendance-wise, just wasn't going to work. Yeah, the writing probably was on the wall, but you know what? You never knew until you tried. Also, with bringing back old tracks, yeah, that's another big one. NASCAR has been much more open to bringing back old, new, any kind of track after this because, like I said, it changed the game. Kyle Larson's incident, while not preferable whatsoever, did lead him to be let go by Ganassi and NASCAR and basically be an unrestricted free agent and paved the way much easier for Rick Hendrick to get him. Not saying he wouldn't have otherwise, but it was much easier. Billy88 Joe says, what happens if Tony Stewart clipped Dale Earnhardt during his 2001 Daytona 500 flip? Well, I'm going to say this. Dale Earnhardt probably survives that race, and that's a good thing. But with every good, there is a bad side effect at times. And I think with this is that many of the safety revolutions NASCAR made probably would not have been made for a long time. I'm talking probably 4 or 5 years, and I guarantee you, well into the 2000s, we'd still be talking about injured and dying drivers on way too regular a basis. I'm not saying that Earnhardt dying was a good thing. I would never say that about anyone passing away. What I'm saying is it brought on a huge revolution that has changed safety in NASCAR forever, and we probably would never have gotten that had he survived that race. It's kind of odd to think about, to be honest. Lucas says probably the time Allison flew into the catch fence. The result of this was the owners of Talladega reinforcing the front stretch fence, preventing Neil Bonnet from flying into the grandstands in '93. Well, there's a couple ways you can look at this. If Allison had had a worse crash and had taken the lives of spectators, that could have been the end of NASCAR as we know it, or NASCAR could have never had that jump forward. Or maybe people are that morbid and more would have watched to see if they could see it again. Who knows? That happened after the Ryan Newman crash. Also, it helped basically bring on modern superspeedway racing with restrictor plates. That may not have happened without this crash. Kyle Nadeau says 2003 NASCAR entering into an exclusive agreement with EA Sports, leading to Papyrus shutting down, iRacing being formed, getting North Wilkesboro scanned, and eventually replacing Texas as the All-Star race. This is a big one because had they not signed this or signed this later, iRacing may not have been formed until much later in time, and we may not have had the perfect storm to bring North Wilkesboro back with Dale Jr.'s iRacing support. Plus, if they hadn't signed this, we probably wouldn't have went into the modern age of gaming and may have even had a better time. Maybe motorsport games wouldn't be a thing. That would have been great. JD brings up, what if the open wheel invasion never happened? I think with that one, the thing you have to look at is driver development. Much of the driver development from the Busch Series up into the Cup Series was stunted due to this invasion because you had a lot of drivers with a lot of pedigree, guys like Juan Pablo Montoya, Sam Hornish Jr., Patrick Carpentier, and while they're not all open wheel guys, what it showed was, hey, these are trusted names who can bring in sponsors in a tough squeeze time for NASCAR, and they may be good. I mean, Montoya, Ambrose, those guys got wins in NASCAR. So I don't blame the teams for doing this, but what I think it did is it did stunt driver development, and to this day, the Xfinity Series has never been the same, and in a lot of ways is probably, along with bushwhacking, why we have individual points for individual series. The Egg says, what if Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch didn't have their iconic finish at Darlington in 2003? Well, the short answer, the Darlington Raceway may have closed because that track at the time was seen by NASCAR as one of the old guard tracks they had to move on from to go into the modern age. It seems stupid now, especially with the track's resurgence, but Martinsville was also on the chopping block as well for that, and it was a way that NASCAR was saying, hey, we appreciate what happened before, not really, and we need to move on to bigger and better markets. But luckily, the finish happened, and Darlington is still on the schedule to this day. That one Jeff Gordon fan says, what if the chase or the playoffs never existed? Because, of course, the Jeff Gordon fan did. Well, I'm going to say this, lucky for you Gordon fans, if this scenario had worked out, you guys would be much more happy. While I don't think they would have all raced exactly the same, I do think 2004, 5, and maybe even 2006 could have played out very similarly. Because when you look at how the teams approached the chase at this point, no one had really figured it out. Yeah, you could say that Jimmy Johnson did, but they basically went balls to the wall for the last couple races because of being stuck in a hole early. And when you look at how they raced in 04 and 05, you could very much tell it was similar to how they raced in 03, 02, 01, and beforehand. It was definitely just try and get as many points as possible, similar to before. But overall, I think it would do one big thing, and that is solidify the base more. There were a lot of changes that many people over time fell away because of, and I think the chase and playoffs is a big part of it, especially the playoff part of it. Had they remained a full season, NASCAR still falls in popularity, but I think it's more gradual and natural. And I think NASCAR in its modern form would be in a much better position. And the last one will have a little bit of fun with Kyle Berrien saying how Janet Jackson's nip slip led to Dale Jr. not winning the 2004 Nextel Cup Championship. Okay, this is kind of yes, kind of no. Bit of backstory here. Janet Jackson was performing with Justin Timberlake in the Super Bowl halftime show. They were supposed to rip off part of her clothing. Unfortunately, Timberlake ripped off all of one, showing a full-on boob. And, the FCC was not happy about it. And they cracked down on a lot of things, including swearing. Well, Dale Jr. said shit in an interview and lost 25 points. Ultimately, he still would have finished 5th in points, but it changed the complexion of the championship. And who knows? Say he doesn't get this penalty, maybe Junior races a lot differently. Again, we could all hypothetically talk about that. Maybe he races differently at Atlanta and ends up winning the championship because of it. Well, that was fun. Now, I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. If you haven't already, let me know what are the greatest butterfly effects you've ever seen in NASCAR. Leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.